This is Red Pole Q here, as usual, and I have with me
McConnell.
And it's been a while because, well, actually we don't really have a reason.
Yep, no good reason.
But we have quite a few questions that have come in since the last time that we did one of these little get-together shindigs. So I think we'll just jump right into those because there are a few and some of them are very, very good. Yep. Very, very good though. That's how Japanese people say very, very good for those of you who don't know. I'm not making fun of their accent. That's just how it's said in Japanese English. Okay. All right. So the first question is one from I think his name is John Testore, and I'll just read what he wrote in. I met this Japanese girl on a first date. I guess he means he met her for first date. Although maybe it was an internet girl. It's unclear. Anyway, she's all smiles and horny, body contact and all that. But I made clear to her before meeting that I only had a few hours of free time over lunch, being a weekday, to which she agreed no problem. Finished lunch, I politely excused myself that I had to get back to work and looked forward to see her next time on a holiday. I picked up the bill, of course. That's when the problem started. She didn't want me to leave and pretended to follow me to my workplace, which I stopped her from doing by telling her it is quote-unquote not professional. I finally took her to the train station after setting an all-day meeting for the next weekend. She hasn't been in touch ever since. What have I done wrong? So this is pretty interesting. First of all, he says that she's all smiles and horny. I don't know how he could be so sure that she was horny, but okay. I will accept that premise that she is horny.
Maybe she told him.
Maybe. But okay, so I'm going to say two things. I actually answered this on the website. He asked this on Asia Dating Experts. Okay. And so I actually responded there. And in my response, I said, some girls are just strange, and you can't account for their behavior. And, that's definitely true. There's a lot of time. You need to have a lot of reference experience to get a sense of sort of what normal behavior and what bizarre and deviant behavior is. You can't look at one situation and say, oh, okay, well, I saw this one thing, that's something that I need to change or that I need to fix. Some people are just plain weird. And they're just strange. And also because there's a lot of things that are situational that we can't know about that determine, so maybe she's unresponsive because the next day, or maybe later that same day, she had another date with another guy who did have sex with her, and that's why. That could be it. And speaking of which, if you find yourself with a girl who you know is legitimately horny, you can't just send that girl home. This was back in the day, so traditionally I'm a day two closer. I generally have sex with girls on the first date, not on the day one where I initially meet them on the day two closer. When I was making the transition to spending, doing more same night lays, more day one closes, one of the problems that I did have was that I wasn't that. I often didn't, pull the trigger when I had the opportunity. And so what would often happen is I would get the girl all juiced up and horny, but I didn't have the closing logistics. And so then, so for example, this could happen if you are out at night. Let's say you meet a girl at a club and you're out with her. And, if you get her all juiced up at like 1 a.m., she's not ready to leave with you. She's still hanging out with her friends. There's all these things logistically that need to be resolved before, you're going to be able to get her out of there. And if you get her all juiced up and horny at 1 o'clock and you're not going to be able to take her out until 3, well, what I found happening to me repeatedly was I'd get them all juiced up and then some other guy would get to take them home because it's hard to keep that momentum up for 2 or 3 hours. Or whatever it is, when, especially in like a nightclub environment where there's lots of other people, with isolation, it's a lot easier. But even then, I've made plenty of mistakes there too. I think I told you the story of the girl that I met her at a club, chatted her up, everything was going really well. We bounced out of the club when it closed with her friends. Her friends, it was like a girl and this girl's boyfriend. They were like, "Oh, take good care of our friend. See ya." And we were supposed to go and get food. So we went to the first place. It was closed. Went to the second place. It was also closed. So I thought, all right, well, fuck this. I'll just try and take her to a Love Hotel. So I bring her to Love Hotel. Sorry, in Japan it's called Love Hotel. Japan it's called Love Motel. I get them all mixed up. I mean, to the Momo. Took her to the Momo. And so obviously I didn't know for sure if it was going to go down, but right in front of the Love Hotel, I just grabbed her and started making out with her. She was totally down. And then I just took her hand and ran into the Love Hotel with her and just picked a room really quickly, and we just went up. So the momentum was there, but I made the mistake of thinking that, okay, I told her that we were going to eat, so I slowed everything down. We ordered food, we waited for it to come, we ate, and then we went to take a shower together. So we're showering together, and this part you've definitely heard. So we're showering together, and I'm washing her, she washes me, she's like washing my dick, she's like, "Oh, it's so big, it's gonna hurt me," right? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're a big girl, I'm sure you can take it or whatever. And then like 5 minutes later, she's like, "Actually, I can't have sex with you, I'm getting married next month." And I was like, actually, and then I was like, well, I mean, we already, got this room and there's a jacuzzi, so we might as well, enjoy it while we're. She's like, "No, I really think I should leave." And I'm like, "Well, no, we already paid, might as well, blah blah blah." And she's like, "Oh, it's fine," she's like, "It's fine, I'll pay. How much is it?" I'm like, "Oh, it's like $100." She's like, "Oh, I only have like 20." Anyway. The point is, though, this was an error on my part, right? Because I should have brought her back to the hotel and just escalated immediately. Now, I thought, now there's not really a way that I could have known that that's what I needed to do. Keep that in mind. It's not like looking back, I can go, "Oh yeah, clearly that was the move." Because you always have this thing, right? If you're playing for like just a one night stand, then escalating immediately would be the obvious move here. But generally that's not my goal. My goal is to have a continuing relationship. So I like to have her available to me in the future. And so to do that, you need to run some level of comfort. And in general, not always. Obviously, there are girls that are just out looking for sex and all of that. But even then, it's if you run comfort, then you have more control of the dynamic. If you don't, it's just up to her whether she feels like it or not, and that changes, and she can just exchange you for another guy at any time because there's no emotional investment there. So so I chose to run it that way with the intention of setting up a continuing thing. And so from that perspective, it wasn't really a mistake, but it illustrates the point, which is that when a girl is horny, you have to escalate at that point. You have to make it happen then. If you don't, then you will often miss your opportunity. Although that opportunity could theoretically appear later, but oftentimes it does not. So, I would say that here, when you might have, if you felt that she was really horny, you could have cut lunch really short and, and it's taken her to the Love Hotel immediately. Now, on the other thing I want to bring up is that based on your communication with her and how keen she seemed, you might have realized that given her keenness level, getting a short meet may not have been the best move, and you should have gotten a meet at a time when there was going to be more availability. And this is a common mistake that guys make, especially they read a lot of Western literature on pickup, and these guys will say, "Oh yeah, I would line up 3 or 4 internet dates on the same day, and I'll meet one for a coffee, then I meet the next one for a coffee, then I meet the next one for a coffee." And I would say that this is in general not a good idea unless you're doing it the way Vision does it, which is that he would set 2-hour time blocks, and then so there'd be a split of 2 hours between each girl. And if any of the girls, and if the first girl seemed like he was going to close, he would cancel on the second girl, go for the close, and then maybe boot her out, and then meet the third girl. So he'd have a solid, 4 hours with the first girl. Or maybe the first girl, he meets her, he doesn't seem like it was going to progress to sex, so he sets up the day 3, skips moves to the next girl, and then if he thinks he's going to be able to close her, then he cancels the third girl, or he pushes it back a couple of an hour or two. So if you do it that way, that can work. But in this case, you had a hard time constraint of your work, so that's not a good situation to put yourself in, pretty much ever. So that's what I would say about two things about what you wrote here. So I don't know. Do you have any comments?
No, it's pretty thorough.
Awesome. Okay, let's move on. How do Asian women in Asia react to men who show strong sexual interest in them? In the West, we have this whole thing about being, quote unquote, thirsty, which is an insult to men who show strong sexual urges to women. One thing you said that threw me off was that Asian women react to men who show interest. So react to men positively who show interest. So how would they react to men who show strong sexual interest? Maybe you want to field this for starters?
So the question is asking what the deal is in Asia. Do women respond positively to men who show lots of sexual interest?
Right, because he's saying that in the West, if you're thirsty, then that's not good. That's a negative, and girls respond negatively to thirsty dudes.
Yeah. I guess, but I kind of think that you can be sort of thirsty in the West. I mean, assuming you're running game properly, right? I actually don't know. I mean, I'm not really sure. My impression of I haven't done game in the West in a long time, so I've not
done game in the West like never. So.
Yeah, so I don't really know. I mean, I guess it just ultimately I think it comes down to how well you're running your game. I mean, you can
had
be
a recent Occidental experience. Some from over there.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that you can show a lot of sexual intent, I think, in the West, and as long as you're running proper game, or your standards are low enough, you can do pretty well, I think. Just because I think that I think that being like showing a lot of sexual intent is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
In the West. I mean, certainly lots of the big pickup companies, aka RSD, their whole thing is like showing lots of sexual intent very early on. I think there was that book by Ozzy from RSD about touching girls.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but yeah.
It's not. It basically
it's a spear.
Yeah, it just tells you to key no more.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so my comment would be, first of all, that this idea of being thirsty, I think that's a little bit different from showing sexual intent, in the same way that like being needy and being interested is different, right?
Yeah.
So this idea of being thirsty. I guess as this guy who wrote in the question, I didn't put his name down, so I don't know who he is. But anyway, this idea of being thirsty is that it sounds like there's a desperation element.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take anything.
Yeah.
I just need to bust that thing out.
Yeah.
So I think that this is similar to being needy, in that who you are determines whether you are needy or not. Right. So when I say that, I mean that this was actually a quote I got from Stefan Henman of Ideagasms. I think I got it from him. Anyway, I'm pretty sure. And it goes, if you're not needy, it's not needy. Meaning, if you're not needy, then whatever behavior you are engaging in is not needy behavior. And it's the same thing here with being desperate. Okay, so you could be really horny and really want to have sex with a girl, but if you had sex with 3 other girls this week, you probably won't be thirsty in the way that this guy means it. You're not going to be like, oh God, I really need to get it. You may really want it, but it's not going to be something that kind of negatively affects your mental and emotional state, I guess you could say.
Yeah, this is another thing. Like, I remember in the old days, I don't know if pickup guys still say this, but they would like, if you like post on one of the forums, you'd be like, oh, I'm like a virgin, or like I haven't had sex in like years or whatever, and then people would be like, oh, just go like have sex with anything.
Yeah.
Just go get whatever you can, so that you're not desperate when you run game.
Yeah, I agree with this, especially for virgins. Also because for virgins, they don't know how to do it. and so you're supposed to be leading, but it's hard to lead someone someplace you've never been before. And it's especially rough because, you know, a lot of the times these virgins are kind of like older guys. I mean, older, you know, like early 20s, mid 20s. And so girls, and because they are learning game, there's this expectation that they know what they're doing. So when they start being, you know, kind of clumsy in the sexual side of things, I think that can be very jarring and very confusing for the girl. So in terms of Asian girls, I think Asian girls respond quite positively to showing sexual interest in them if it's done in the right way. So, you know, if you, so a lot of times in the West, what they would consider to be showing sexual interest would be, you know, making out with her or something like that. Now, I would say that making out with her generally is not a good move, especially if you're in public. But there are other things that you can do to show sexual interest that are, I guess, much more, I would say it's much more effective if you are quite, you know, let's say naughty, but in private. So in the West, you know, you might sit on a park bench and make out with a girl. Not so great. But if you're sitting with a girl at a table and you're feeling up her legs under the table where no one can see, then that will be exciting for her in a way that, obviously, theoretically, I guess that would be exciting for Western women too, but it's also exciting for them just to be on the street with you grabbing their ass. Yeah. Apparently. Yeah. Both of us have looks of disdain on our faces. Yeah. Did you get some of that when you were? Well, taking a trip on the other side.
Please, let's keep the show Asia appropriate. But I also think, you know, there's lots of ways you can do it aside that aren't just physical, like, you know, asking sexual qualifying questions. That's like a really good one. You know, again, without the desperation, you know, just talking about sex is really good. Telling sexual stories is really good. Yeah.
Ain't no question. So, okay, so moving along to the next question. I think we've adequately covered that. So we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so this is this is a question about he says how to game when out with colleagues. So I assume this means like actual like work colleagues and not just like friends, although it's a little bit unclear because there are different levels of colleagues, right? So maybe we'll address that part too. Anyway, he said they might think I'm a quote unquote player and it feels awkward to do cold approach in front of them. How to get around this problem? So first of all, you know, it obviously depends on the level of these colleagues. You know, are they... Do you work directly with them? Do they have some control over your advancement or is it just going to be, you know, random gossip, right? Because if it's just random gossip, like, you know, let's say, you know, you work at McDonald's or something. It doesn't really matter, right? But if you, or if you work in an environment like, or in Asia, I would say if you work in an English school, you know, or then it's at when I say an English school, I mean like a English tutoring school, like in Korea, Hagwon, or in Japan, an Eikaiwa, or in Bushibang, I guess is what it is in Chinese. So, I mean, if you work at one of those sort of things where there's not really, you know, advancement, you know, there's not like, yes, there are some, you know, maybe you can be the manager of the curriculum or something. But anyway, you know, outside of, you know, if it's that kind of situation, then, you know, it doesn't really matter what your colleagues think about you. You know, it's not like you're likely to get fired from your job unless you really are doing something with your actual students. So, you know, if you mean those kind of colleagues, then it really doesn't matter. Obviously, there might be some office talk about you, but, you know, most of the time it'll be kind of what I would say positive, in the sense that they'll say, oh yeah, he was talking to these girls or something like that. Not like, oh, he's so disgusting. They don't really disdain guys being interested in girls in Asia, in the way that people do in the West, where, you know, it's just supposed to happen. You know, in Asia, they know better. Either you're going to do something or you're going to pay for it. So only two ways. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is that, you know, one way to manage this, and certainly I've done this and other people have done this, is that, usually if you're out with a group, your group will be somewhat stationary. So they're stationary, and that can be like your base. And then you can sort of peel off and go into places where they're not going to immediately be. Like you can go out to the smoking section even if you don't smoke. Where and obviously if you don't like smoker girls, then this isn't going to work. But you can go out to the smoking section and you can hit up some girl out there. Or maybe you can be if the place is somewhat crowded, then you could be not that far away from them, but sort of obscured by the other people in the crowd, and then you could engage a girl. Or maybe you go over by the bathrooms, and that's generally a little bit isolated, and you approach a girl over there. So and under those circumstances, it's not that's another way to do it. Now another example would be you are sitting with your group at the table, and if someone is sitting next to you at another table, then leaning over and saying a little something to the people at the next table over, the girls at the next table over, that's no big deal. You just will come across as being a social person. In general, you get the player vibe, or not the player vibe, but the player label from like going out and making sort of effortful approaches, I guess is what I would say. But if you just chat someone up who's sitting next to you or who's walking past, then generally that's not really seen as, you're just seen as being social. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Any other things?
I think the hardest part of being out with like colleagues or friends who don't know game is that you have no one to wing with.
Yeah.
So you can't do like these big sets. So that's pretty. Or if like the girls or if their friends come in, you don't have anyone to field the friends, and that's really difficult. I remember like when I was first learning game in my small town, I had like tried to bring some of my friends to the mall with me when I was gaming, and that was a mistake because
really?
I like there's already low volume in the middle of nowhere where I'm from, and I think I approached that day. I did like 5 or 6 sets, and they all blew out. They were like girls with their friends, right? And so of course once I brought my friends in, I like fucked it up. And then when I did my boot camp, it was really funny because I like did all these sets, and the multi-girl sets or mixed sets, my instructor would come in and he'd bring me in and he'd like wing me, and I was like, holy shit, he's actually helping. He's like doing everything right.
Yeah, that is a problem. I mean, you can definitely be in set and your colleagues will clown you, and make you look bad, not purposefully, but just because they don't realize what they're doing. They just think it's all fun and games. They don't think about your your power position
right
in that moment.
Yeah, so definitely just be careful about that. And if you or if you have some colleagues that that kind of know more about your life, or like who know more about socializing, maybe just like leading them more and telling them what to do if if you need a wing or something like that.
Yeah. One of the things that can be problematic if you're winging with people or you're out with people who don't really know game is that they will end up having trouble with their conversation, and so because they're having trouble, they'll either start like interacting with like, so they see you talking and you're doing fine, they're stalling, so they'll join in with your conversation, which brings the two, now let's say if it's 2 girls and 2 guys, they'll bring the set back together, destroying your isolation. So one of the things you can do, and this is difficult when you're new, but when you're more advanced it can be easier, you can ask the girl that you're talking to some things about her friend, and then if you see that their conversation is dying, you can say, oh, did she tell you about her trip to such and such a place? Or in reverse, you can throw out topics for your guy friend to talk about. Be like, oh yeah, tell her about, when we went to X place, or whatever story he's told you. Tell her that story. That's a great story. And then you can go back to your girl. Yeah, so I've done that on many occasions. But that can work to keep the conversation going.
Yeah. Excellent point.
Okay. Okay, let's we have a question here about squirting, how to make a girl squirt. That's very easy. Go to the Ultimate Sex Guide.
Yeah.
Asia Dating Experts Ultimate Sex Guide, and just get it. There you go. Then you'll know how to squirt. So
alternatively, you can take our live course.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Where we can demo the material live and in person.
We
can get splashed.
Make it splash. We don't always have a live demo girl, but we do have a video that was taken in front of a live audience. So anyway, yeah. So you get the videos whether you take the course live or whether you get the ultimate sex guide. So that's how to make a girl squirt. Okay, moving along. Thoughts on other PUAs without being judgmental, which is difficult, I know. Any thoughts on Jan Lifestyle, David Bond, and Daniel Blake? So my thoughts on Jan Lifestyle and Daniel Blake is I don't know who these people are. I've been doing pickup, and I started teaching pickup in 2007. So most of these I was teaching it in 2007. So most of these guys were still in diapers. So that's my opinion. Is they're I'm not really interested. Everything really that needs to be known about pickup came along way before these guys showed up. So that's the first thing I would say. About David Bond specifically, I'd say he's a great marketer. There you go. He's a great marketer. He's good with his video content. He's good at producing video content. Definitely one of my weak points, but he's very good at producing video content and presenting his lifestyle as something to strive for. From the perspective, and I've listened to one of his videos, I guess, and what he said, I think I agreed with what he was saying. So that's my perspective on David Bond.
Yep, agreed on all fronts. I don't know. You want to talk about some other PUAs?
Well, we could talk about mystery.
Yeah, mystery's the best.
Mystery. Actually, so when I think about other pickup artists, really there's only a few.
Really, people. There's only one, and that's mystery. All right, great discussion, guys.
But it is true. I mean, it is true that mystery basically invented everything, and everybody else just riffed on what mystery already came up with.
Yeah.
So but I will say from my perspective, the most important PUAs, and some of these are not really PUAs in the traditional sense, but the most important PUAs were mystery, of course.
Also, mystery didn't come with everything. Ross Jeffries invented some things before mystery.
Oh, things that you would use?
No. I'm just saying that he made things before mystery
that's
finished
true.
his model.
Right. Okay. But anyway, the point is mystery. It basically has everything there is to know about pickup. Okay, so there's mystery. There is well, let's start with people that are in the pickup community first, and then I'll move people to outside. So mystery. Old school Tyler Durden, of RSD, great stuff from him. Jeffy, also from RSD, great stuff from him. And I think that about does it for the PUAs.
Yeah, great overview.
I think that's about it. So if you so get anything by mystery. Obviously, style was important because he wrote the game.
Yeah.
And Dave D'Angelo was important because he publicized a lot of the guys in the game.
Yeah.
So they were important from that perspective. Dave D'Angelo was a great sort of gateway drug because he seems very mainstream. So it was a great way to for people to be get their first hit, and then before they really got into it and went down the rabbit hole with the real players. So that's what I would say. About the real PUA guys. Other people that I think are very important, Daniel Rose, who wrote the Sex God Method, and no one has probably heard of this guy, but David Shade.
Yeah, David Shade.
David Shade, the two of them for sexual technique.
Yeah.
Stefan of Ideagasms, who has been discredited, but as a pickup artist, but I would say that his perspectives on relationships are really quite good.
His programs really make you think a lot, even if you don't use, because a lot of it is this kind of mystic spiritual stuff. But But even if you don't use
the weird stuff.
if you don't use the weird stuff, it still makes you think a lot. I thought when I first watched that stuff, it made me like change my perspective on relationships a lot.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
that was
So
good.
it was a girlfriend training program,
Yep.
and I, and also he was the first person really to frame, when you're dating someone as being a training program.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else out there really frames that way. I suppose Daniel Rose does a bit, but really just from a sexually training perspective, not from an overall lifestyle developmental perspective. So so Stefan Ideagaz, the girlfriend training program and the bisexual girlfriend training program are quite good. Let me see. David Dita, Way of the Superior Man. Once again, it's similar to it's quite similar to Dave D'Angelo, where it's like understanding girls, light, the light version that anyone can access and feel comfortable reading.
Yeah.
He says things like, you're going to feel this way, and that's normal, but it's fine because you're not going to act that way or act on that, but maybe you are.
Richard Bandler.
Oh yeah, Richard Bandler of NLP. Yes, that's right. Which is really just about good communication.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the man himself, Robert Greene of The Art of Seduction. Woo!
Yeah.
So, pretty much I think that's kind of all you need, really.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, if you study that stuff, you'll know basically everything there is to know about game and pickup. Now, that is not to say that I do things in the ways that they do things. I definitely have disagreements with Daniel Rose. I have some disagreements with David Shade, but I have disagreements with Stefan. But they, as you were saying about idea gatherers, it's like when you think about what they say, it leads you in directions that will be extremely positive. So there you go. That's what I would say about other P-Waves and all these other people who showed up later. They just pretty much
riding on Mystery's thunder.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they basically emphasize like some area of. It's kind of like the way people when people back in the day when Mystery was still bigger, people were like, "Oh, that negging stuff," and it was like Mystery became famous for this one technique that isn't even really that important as Mystery method. It's like it's like talking about how to make a stew and everyone's focusing on how he cuts the carrots. I mean, it's really ridiculous. And so but a lot of the pickup artists basically did the same thing but they did it on purpose, where they focused in on one particular aspect of game, and it's like, oh, I'm the greatest ever because I do this one thing. And it's like, no, actually. So that's my thoughts on other P-Ways. I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to...
I actually, there are some like Ross Jeffries programs that I thought were pretty interesting.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I do like Ross. I mean, it's just like NLP,
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of cool stuff. Like he has a lot of cool NLP patterns for, like for making yourself like more confident when you go out, or like feeling better, like having putting yourself in like a better. I hate using the word state, but putting yourself in like
mental mindset.
having a better mental attitude. He has like a lot of good stuff about reframing situations or setting frames with girls. I thought I took a lot away from like programs that he did where he talks about reframes and framing your interaction with the girl in the right way. So I actually been thinking about rewatching a lot of his older stuff.
Interesting.
Just because I remember liking it.
Well, if you do, let me know. I'll be down to watch it, because I've never really spent much time with Ross Jeffries, but that's largely because I've been in Asia and studying language patterns.
Yeah, of course, it's not really useful.
Not so useful for most of the time that I was here.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's move on. Okay, so is this going to be the next question? Yes.
We're 30 minutes in. So.
Oh, only 30. Okay, great. Okay, so this question was a guy in Dubai and a Korean girl who worked for Emirates, and apparently there are like 1,000 Korean girls working at Emirates or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, and there's like only like 300 Japanese or something like that.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Or maybe those are the Qatar Airways numbers. But anyway, the point is, it's kind of interesting that there's so many fewer Koreans in the world but so many more working in
the Emirates
or
Qatar or whatever.
Yeah, I guess and apparently when I was in Qatar, they were saying that the Japanese all they finish out their contract, they just fucking go back. They're like, fuck this, going back to Japan, gotta have a bath every day.
Yep.
Okay, so anyway, so he was in Dubai with this Korean girl on a date, or maybe he picked her up at a club or a bar. It's not clear, but anyway, we both wanted to have sex because I managed to get back to her room and we were quote unquote getting down to it, but I was cock blocked by the security of the accommodation. At Emirates cabin crew accommodation, they have security guards. They don't allow non-cabin crew in the accommodation. I managed to sneak in, but I was caught after some time. She deleted my number on WhatsApp, so that's why we had each other's number. And you can tell when someone deletes you off WhatsApp because there's only one tick. I managed to find her on Facebook and she accepted my messages. If you could follow up with how to approach this now, it would be great. So how do I re-engage to get her back? And he acknowledges a point that I told him, which is that scheduling cabin crew girls is a nightmare. And she may fly to his city soon, so back to Dubai soon. Okay, so let's talk about let's talk about this situation. So first of all, the first problem is that you didn't control the logistics. Now, it's possible, because it's not stated here, but oftentimes, at least in Qatar Airways, the cabin crew have a curfew. So if you needed, the only chance was for you to get back to her place because there was a curfew, well, then you're rolling the dice on that, and that there's lots of probabilities that you're not going to be able to get it. And you just have to accept that this is a not good situation, a far from optimal situation. If on the other, but ideally, you don't put yourself in that situation. You take care of the logistics. That's always the best, because you want to control the environment as much as possible. I'm not saying you can't close her at her place, or as we used to call it, a take to her home instead of a take home, a take to her home. It certainly is possible, but you control a lot less of the situation, and so that makes it harder. If you go back to her place and she has a dog that needs attention, or she has friends come to visit, or someone calling her,
a husband waiting at home.
A husband waiting at home. This has happened. There's a lot of things that can mess it up. Also, she has various anchors to her home as well. Yep. Maybe that might turn off her mood. So all those things make it not ideal to not control the closing location, the sex location. Now, okay, so she deleted you off of WhatsApp, but you found her on Facebook and you re-engaged, and she seems keen to talk. So, what do you do going forward? Well, first of all, what I would do is not talk about what happened previously. This is a mistake that guys often make. Oh, why did you delete me off WhatsApp? Or, why haven't I heard from you? Okay, now, the only way to talk about any disappearance like that is to say, oh, I'm so glad you're okay. I was really worried about you. I thought maybe something happened. Especially as in your case, presumably there's a chance she got in trouble with for having a guest over. So, you could always re-engage by showing concern for her situation. Most people are quite selfish. Excuse me, I had to take a swig of water there. Water. And so most people are quite selfish. So so a lot of times girls will block guys because that's the behavior they expect. They expect, some negative, vibes coming from that direction. So, the way to approach it is, to show concern. Oh, I'm really glad you're okay. I didn't see you on WhatsApp for a long time, and I thought something might happen to you. I hope you didn't get into too much trouble because of me. I really just I really had a great time with you, and I really just want to be able to see you again. There's these places or things that I saw, or that I saw, and I thought you'd really like them, and I thought it'd be really great if we could go to them. And the reason for doing that second part is to take the shift the thing away from sex onto other things. Now, is it possible that just staying on sex can work? Yes, it's possible. Is it more advantageous to switch away from that? Absolutely. Well, why? Well, the reason is that she already knows that you're interested in sex, but she's likely to think that you're only interested in sex. So when you shift it away from that and say, oh, I saw this and the other thing, and it really made me think of, you, because I know you would have really liked that. It's like, oh, okay, it's not only about sex. There's more to it. And, this, even if she's only interested in sex, gives her the plausible deniability she needs to feel that she can engage with you and talk to you. So that's how I would engage with her. And then also you're setting that future projection of things that you want to do with her. So the fact that she may be coming back to the city, you can reiterate those things. You can say, oh yeah, well, oh, that's great you're coming back. When you're back here, I really want that thing that I mentioned, I think you'd really like that. I'd love to take you there, so I hope that's possible. Now, it's very possible it's not. When cabin crew show up in cities, they often have, quite constrained schedules. So she may not be able to, but, as with many situations, it's the thought that counts, especially when it's her problem that prevents things from happening. And not yours. If you basically tell a girl that you want to take her to do stuff or that you want to do things with her and then you just don't, even though you could, then that's on you and it can make you look bad. Although girls seem to be pretty patient with sincere promisers who never deliver.
Yeah.
But in general, if you want to, that puts you in a great position. Oh wow, when you do see her, oh, it's too bad we couldn't have met a lot earlier. It's 9 o'clock. I had these places I wanted to take you, but they're all closed now. So, it's really too bad. But, I got a bottle of wine that, we could have, unless you're Muslim, in which case that wouldn't work. Some nice tea, and you could have her over for tea. And, already you got her in the sex location. And, the reason that you're in the sex location isn't because you're trying to get sex. It's because the other options weren't available to you. So that's what I would say is the best way to sort of handle this situation. Any other
that was a very thorough response.
Yeah. I'm known for my thoroughness, I think. Pretty sure that's true. Known for my thoroughness when it comes to giving guys advice about girls. That's definitely true. Okay. Let me see. Wow. I mean, we went through almost everything on here. Okay, let's open up. Let's check this out. Check it out. Check it out. There's some other questions. Actually, maybe we should talk a little bit about texting. Should we do that? What do you think?
Well, what? Well, why texting specifically?
Oh, I just have it on the list.
Oh, okay. Well, what else is on the site? Are there any other questions we didn't get to?
Yeah. Here we go. More Korean girls. I recently had my first encounter of dating a cute 8.5 to 9 Korean. She recently moved to Australia just as I did and had lots of trouble differentiating between what works with East versus West in terms of gaming. I typically date westernized Asian women, but this woman was straight up from Korea. Woo! Yeah, that what that means. It means she was fit and dressed
well done.
really well. Yeah, exactly. And doesn't think that she's the hottest thing on the planet. English wasn't her first language, and she was reserved, so it was really tough to understand and read her most of the time. I had to do 90% of the talking, and I got really tired after our first and second date. I didn't want to see her again after our second date because she didn't really offer much value other than being good looking, and I stopped calling her. As soon as I stopped calling, she started contacting me, and I was a sucker for going out with her again. I don't know why you would be a sucker for going out on a date with a girl who calls you. I mean, that's totally winning in my book.
Yeah.
I wish that would happen to me. Korean girls in the 8.5 to 9 range calling me out. Anyway, this girl would create lots of jealousy tests by trying to frame that she is the catch, and I wasn't sure if I handled it properly. She will say things like, "Oh, I was at a bar and a bunch of Italian guys were talking to me," or "San Francisco is my favorite city. There are a lot of guys there, and guys would come to me all the time to give me their number. She's an attractive girl, and I can see why she would say these things. Typically, my response to these types of behaviors is that I would either ignore it or reverse it back to her by telling stories about me hanging out with all these other girls. I show her pictures of me with other females having a good time. Unfortunately, I can't tell if these work because she was really good at not being expressive at all and would just smile at times. Would you say these are the correct responses? I think I once went a bit overboard when I told her one of my Korean female friends told me to go to Jeju Island because of the girls over there. Is that true that Jeju Island has cute girls? Haha. She somewhat gave me an angry response by saying that there are no girls over there. Okay, well, let me talk about Jeju Island. I haven't been myself, but it's a Korea tourist island. So, it's like the Okinawa it's like Okinawa is to Japan, Jeju is to Korea. So, I mostly know of it as being a couple's place. But it is possible that single girls go there with their friends too. But I think it's more common for single girls to go to Busan in the summertime and be at the beach there. So that's my advice to you. And actually, among Korean pickup artists, guys who are Korean, that's a big thing is to go to Busan in the summertime. And apparently this is years ago because I haven't really been involved in the Korean pickup community that much recently, but years ago, a lot of Koreans can't swim, so they're all out in the ocean in like inner tubes, and I guess like Korean guys would like throw them over out of the inner tube, and then I guess they go and save them. So anyway, there you go. I'm not saying that what you should do, but that's what you can do. Okay, so let's back up here. So you took her out on a first and a second date, and then you had to do most of the talking, and then you didn't try and see her again after that. Now, you didn't give much information about these dates, but what you certainly didn't include is any apparent attempts to try and have sex with her. I would say that, one of the problems that guys who game in the West have, and you make this mistake multiple times here, is that you are looking for signals.
Yeah.
And in the West, this is something you can do. Girls will, take active steps. I remember I was out with this girl who's from New Zealand. Yeah. And, white girl from New Zealand. She's in Japan as a model. And I used straight up mystery lines. I was just like, we were sitting at lunch, and I said, "Oh, I'm trying so hard not to kiss you right now." And then like a couple minutes later, she just stood up and leaned over and kissed me. I was like, "Oh shit, this is incredible! This is amazing!" Because that will not happen with an Asian girl ever.
Yeah.
The fact that you, in fact, stated this, what really will most likely happen is it'll make her really uncomfortable. By the way, I've since graduated to saying things like, if no one was here, I would just bend you over the table and fuck you right here. So I've moved beyond mystery method. But the point that I want to make is that looking for signals is a loser's game.
Yep, definitely. I made this mistake once.
Once?
The one time that I made this that made me never want to make it again is I was out in where was I? I was in the UK somewhere on my first trip overseas, and I was gaming a Spanish girl, and I took her out, and I took her out on two separate dates. Day 2 and day 3, and it was going so well. I mean, she wasn't leaving, right? And I bounced her to like 3 different locations, and I was like, when is she gonna give me some signals? When is she gonna give me? I was like waiting. When is she gonna give me some IOIs? And
for those of you who don't know, IOIs are indicators of interest.
Yeah, and I was like, but she didn't give me anything. She was like really very like stoic, very not giving me, but she was going everywhere with me. And she was doing everything I took her to do.
And she seemed to be having a good time.
Yeah. And she was enjoying herself, and it was going, it was an excellent day 2 and day 3 by my standards now. Mm-hmm. And I didn't close. And I went on some pickup forum, and I like posted. I was like the field report or whatever, and I was like, what was going wrong? Like what happened? And then someone was like, dude, she's Spanish. Have you ever seen Spanish guys? they have an insane amount of swagger. She's like, if Spanish girls ever gave indicators of interest, they would just be fucking all the time. And that was a really good point. And you know, they said, you know, people were just like, oh, you should have just tried to close. And I was like, okay, well, I'm never gonna make that mistake again. So yeah, definitely, this is a huge mistake that American guys, I think, or just, you know, North American guys make all the time. Yeah, never do that. Really painful. Especially when you look back on it and you're like, oh, I could have closed. It's the worst.
It is the worst, absolutely. So yeah, so that's the thing here, is that, you know, generally speaking, Asian girls don't give a lot of signals, but they'll go along with whatever it is you want them to do. And if they're doing that, then that's all you need.
Yes.
So the other thing I would say is that even if you're not actually able to have sex with her, that's what moves things forward. The attempt to have sex with her is what moves things forward. Now, it's clear that you definitely could have had sex with her on one of those 2 dates because she called you.
Yeah.
She called you. So she thinks... So she, in this case, she was right. You weren't that interested in her. So you stopped trying to see her. Now, then you said that she created lots of jealousy tests. Well, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because in general, the whole idea behind making someone jealous is that now they are more interested. They're more interested, and so that's why they you know, so they're trying to induce jealousy in you to see your response. You know, if you get jealous, then they go, oh, they're interested. And so you are playing this stupid game. And I know I'm not saying it's stupid because you're stupid. I'm just saying it's a stupid game to play just because you don't need to be doing that. That's a case of not doing the right things. So she's trying to say, look, I'm really desirable. You should be working harder for me. That's what she's trying to say. And she's saying that because you didn't try to have sex with her. All you had to do was try to have sex with her. And probably she would have had sex with you, and then you would be really happy instead of complaining about how she doesn't talk. Because, you know, actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, another point is... you know, if you're gaming with real Asian girls and you're on the day 2, you should be doing 90% of the talking.
Yes.
I mean, most of the time, you know, there was one of the day 2s I had. I mean, this was, I guess, after I had closed the girl, but with Cindy, I did 100% of the talking on the first date with her. Yeah. I took her out to dinner and she didn't say anything. She just sat there, and I ran the whole conversation, and she laughed a little bit and acknowledged and did like yes or no, and you know, then on the subsequent date she talked more. Mm-hmm. But it was the one man show, man. Like,
oh, keep in mind that he'd already had sex with this girl.
Yeah, but I think if even if I hadn't, you know, that it would feel kind of normal. Like, right. You know, I've definitely had lots of dates where I was doing.
And, you know, Sage went out with a girl who he still is seeing, who on the day 2 told him, I don't want you to ask me any questions. And I don't think that's changed. I still think after, a year and a half or 2 years of him seeing her, she still doesn't want him to ask her any questions. Yeah. But, you know, she shows up, and from what I can tell, she does the job for our man.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's just kind of how Asia is with you know, a lot of Asians are, especially, you know, when you're talking about, you know, them speaking in another, you know, in a second language, you know, if you're talking to them in English and they're Korean, or they're talking English and they're Japanese, or whatever it is. So, that's what I would say. And running this jealousy thing in reverse on her, there's no point. Just try and have sex with her.
Yeah. So we're about at an hour now, so...
Okay. Great. Okay, well, thanks a lot. I know, I think we probably had some other questions that I will get to the next time.
Yeah, we could do the texting discussion next time, too.
Oh, yeah, we definitely can. So, there you go. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining us. I hope you got a lot out of that. And we will be back again, probably sooner than this time, you know. But there you go.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Remember, attraction only takes 3 minutes.